What is going on, team? Welcome back to another video. Today I want to discuss one of the slightly more unglamorous topics, but one that is absolutely necessary to keep us bolted together and able to do all the things we want to in the gym, on the road, on the hills, wherever. And that is, drumroll please, mobility work. Now, this would have been a very different conversation for me about 12 months ago, but there have been a couple of minor little tweaks that I've introduced and kind of had to put in the flipping hard yards of forcing myself to do it enough for the first probably 3-4 weeks. And now it is completely habituated and automatic. And there are a few components of like my prehab, rehab routine with my mobility that I will simply just never miss. I'm not gonna give you guys a crap load of stuff to do, but there are a couple of foundational basics that I believe if you bolt onto your warm up and make sure that you do implement in some way, you'll 100% reap the rewards from, not just in regards to your performance in the gym, but just in terms of feeling mobile and loose and not completely flipping tight outside the gym as you're trying to live your life. You need a lacrosse ball, a foam roller, a resistance band, some snake repellent, and a can-do attitude. Let's go. Resistance band stuff to start, guys. So what we are going to do is lanyard one of these bad boys to preferably something that isn't going to move. And we're going to start off our static mobility session today. Again, this is not going to take too long, but with some what's called banded distraction, which basically means the resistance band, so ball and socket joint as the hip is, effectively it moves around like this, but what it's going to do is it's just going to force a little bit of kind of extra pull moving through the top of the joint in a way that would be very hard to replicate in day-to-day life. So get the band up close to your you-know-what, and effectively it is going to be the front leg that I'm going to work on first. And as you can kind of imagine in this position, the band pulling that way, there's a little bit of pressure I've got to apply here, but all I'm going to do is I'm just going to do some tiny little kind of pulsating movements, or in fact you can hold it forwards and backwards. And a lot of the time, the more you've done this stuff, you'll start to tune into your body. And a lot of you probably warm up and stretch like this anyway, in that there might be certain movements that you just kind of need to go through because your body is telling you to work at that range and work through that plane and in that movement. That's what's called moving and stretching intuitively, and that is something that I imagine most people will do at some point. If you're anything like me, purely based on the fact that your brain will go mental if you're not symmetrical, you have to do everything evenly. So I have this a lot with like core work, like rotational or counter rotation work. If I think I've done one more rep on one side, I'm like, I can feel my body's not even, I don't like it. There's a couple of different ways that we could set up this video and different orders that we could put everything in. We could do it by body part, but effectively the way that I actually want to do it is by piece of equipment. So we're on the band doing some banded distraction at the moment. We've done some work around the hips. Now what we're going to keep the band out for banded distraction, but we're going to do some shoulder stuff instead. Resistance band, pull-up bar, lanyard it over. You wouldn't believe me, but that was only take one. And then what you're gonna do, in fact, I'm gonna take my watch off, and I want in a movement that is effectively allowing my shoulder kind of girdle in the capsule to stretch out in as relaxed a nature as possible. I want as little tension going through my forearm as possible. So effectively what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop the band around my wrist, and on the extra little bit I'm actually going to hook grip it. So I'm doing everything I can to make sure there's no tension there, because as soon as I get tension in my forearm, I've got tension all the way and my shoulder starts to tighten, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So what I'm going to do, put my hand through, hook grip the rest of the band, and then effectively get into a position. Let me move you beautiful people over there. It's better, you're more comfortable there, aren't you? So hand through, hook grip, get to position. Normally with tension it'll be here, but I'm just going to apply a little bit of weight through my heels, pushing myself back, and really kind of stretch around that side, and I can feel it pulling on my lats. You'll probably be able to see this from a better angle this time. So again, hand through, hook grip on the band, so there's basically no tension. All I've got to do is kind of close my fingers and my thumb, and then from there it should be fine. Again, if there's tension in my shoulder, it'll be here. So really just consciously, big deep breath in. As you exhale, just allow that shoulder to relax. And I'm kind of pushing through, pushing my shoulder girdle and lat in the direction, kind of opening that up, and you just feel everything. The shoulder kind of get pulled out of the socket a little bit. Loads of kind of releasing tension in the lat, and with the fascial slings that are on your back, I can literally feel that loosening. I can literally feel that loosening, kind of decompressing a little bit all the way down to the bottom. Literally right there. It's mental. So again, three-dimensional movement. You don't just have to stay static with it. I wouldn't do kind of pulses this way as such, but I just oscillate and allow yourself to rock a little bit. Same amount of time on each arm, obviously, and you just feel as well as your shoulder girdle start to relax. Well, not relax as such as kind of loosen or mobilize. For me, with the amount of kind of like pull work I do, and I do a lot of explosive pull work before I actually do push movements to kind of stabilize my shoulder. So with that can get very tight, so it just feels as though my lats just start to finally loosen off. Okay guys, so this is where the trusty lacrosse ball comes in. So a lot of tension and tightness and pain that we experience in our calf and in our Achilles, and therefore kind of all the way up the chain, can actually come from underneath the foot. I had this a lot when I was doing bobsleigh. They were just tight, it was just permanent tightness, and it just felt as though there was a level of like partial contraction that was just constant. And I just had flipping no idea what to do with it. And I finally started having the underside of my foot treated, and it made the world of difference, and a lot of that pain went away. So I advise you start doing this seated unless you've been doing it for a while. But what you can do is basically transfer the weight a little bit onto one foot, roll. I like kind of under the arch, so effectively more towards the inside of the foot, so kind of that line from the heel towards kind of the big toe and the toe next to that. What the toe next to the big toe is called. Maybe put it down in the comment section below. And from there, it's gonna start feeling a little bit crunchy. You'll probably start to feel it kind of crunch and a little bit of like bubble wrap, or you crushing some flipping Rice Krispies, but that's the good stuff. That's when you know it's working. And sometimes if you get it on a pressure point, I like to literally just hold it there. And if you can, hold it on the same position and move the toes up and down. This is not fun when you first do it. Same as foam rolling, there's no way to do it. You've got to put in the flipping hard yards of getting this stuff ready, but otherwise you'll just end up less mobile than the fucking barbells that you're lifting unless you do an appropriate amount of good quality, appropriate mobility work. And this, considering foundationally most movements that we do have some level of ground contact between your feet and the floor, it makes sense that the feet and the lower part of the leg receive some deliberate attention to get nice and loose. So using the hockey ball, again, just crunching it, I reckon about 60 to 90 seconds on each foot. If it holds on a particular pressure point, hold it there, open and then close the toes. And as I said earlier, team, doing this seated just allows a little bit more control. If you're doing it standing, you'll be slightly less balanced. You might lean over and step down on the ball a little bit too much, and that's not going to be fun for you. So in terms of the weight, in terms of your body's weight distribution, and putting a little bit more or a little bit less pressure from your foot down through the ball, this allows you to do that slightly more subtly rather than stumbling around like an elephant, and then instead of feeling like you got up in the middle of the night and trod on Lego. Oh, it's horrendous, isn't it? Now onto the calves themselves. So, foam rollers. I'm actually going to do a separate video on foam rolling. If there's anything specifically, any questions that you have for that, or any requests in regards to that video, because I've yet to film that, then please do let me know, put them down in the comment section below. But I will say very quickly at this juncture, foam rolling can be good for your calf. Again, anything, if you're not doing any of this stuff at the moment, then pretty much anything is going to be good for your calf. But realistically, it can be so tight with some fine kind of knotted points that it might just not be enough. So the ball here just gives you a bit of an opportunity to kind of hit some points that realistically a foam roller might be too big and ugly to get into. So I tend to kind of sit here. You can either just like allow the weight of the leg to go down through the ball and that might be enough, or pushing up, and then again, as soon as the hips come off the floor, you've got a lot more weight going through. And again, just go through three-dimensional, everything. So I start on the outside. For me, further up the calf isn't too bad. It's down here near the ankle. It's a little bit sore, but I would say slow and steady is very much the key here. You know, 5-6 seconds to do kind of one length, a little bit on the popliteal, so behind the knee, and exactly the same as underneath the foot. If you feel a certain pressure point, so say my pressure point was there, I would hold it on there and wait for it to release, and all I would do is I wouldn't move position, but I'd get the tissues underneath moving around it a little bit by putting my foot up and then pushing my foot down. So probably about 2 minutes on each calf. I said 60 to 90 seconds for under the feet, a little bit longer here because it's basically a bigger area, more tissue required. So you see me kind of doing this little pulsating movement. Ah! It was leg day earlier. Would you believe? It's not an excuse, that's 100% true. So there's just more surface area to cover with this. So I do about 2 minutes. And there we have it, calves are done. So I gave you a little bit of a kit list at the beginning. Turns out we need a box as well. So I'm gonna do some shoulder stuff now. I'm gonna move my microphone slightly. Hopefully it's still gonna work. So from here, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drop down, and this is a little bit of, we're moving on to kind of shoulders and a little bit more lats now. So from here, allowing the head and neck to drop. Again, just allowing the weight of the torso to come through. If you can move the hands a little bit, then do that. And this just starts to work on your spine, on your thoracic spine, shoulders, and lats. I don't think you need too much in that position, maybe about 45 seconds. But keeping on the theme of the back and thoracic and rotational work, which is something that I think is absolutely flipping paramount in mobility, that is what we're gonna move on to now. So super Billy basic, and a lot of people do these, but then if there are certain movements that a lot of people do, on one hand it might be a fad, on another hand maybe there's a flipping reason for that. So Camel Cats, this is what we're going to do now. So on all fours in this position, and then effectively from there, from the bottom vertebrae, this is what I tell a lot of my athletes at Team Atlas, guys. I am not attempting to just get to each end range as quick as possible. I'm attempting to control the movement one vertebrae at a time from one position to the next. So we start off in neutral on all fours. Again, you guys would likely go down your palms. I can't do that because I'm disabled, so I go down on my fists. And then from there, what we are going to do, one vertebrae at a time, I always start from the pelvis and work up towards the neck. So I'm effectively going to tuck under as much as possible, then start to push the mid back up, then the shoulders. From there, you just want to reverse it, starting with the pelvis, so sticking the bum back, following out the mid back, starting to arch now, dropping the shoulders down, and then head and neck up. Oh, I just felt a little click. That was bloody beautiful. So 3 or 4 of those at each end range is perfect, but again, it's not about rushing from one to the next. It's about controlling the transition from one end range to the next, not just throwing the back up and then hollowing it out and arching. So some one plane of motion now onto the rotational stuff. Again, palms for you, fists for me, hand behind the ear, and all I'm doing is I'm dropping down, going to end range, slight pause there, and all the way up, exposing the chest, and lifting that elbow, this one that I'm wiggling around, as high as possible, and exposing that chest to the opposite wall. All the way down again, and then up. Again, 5 or 6 of those. Switch round, down. Breathing out as you drop. Keeping that arm that's in contact with the ground nice and straight though, keeping your feet and knees in position. Lifting up, chest exposed to the other wall. And exhale as we drop all the way down again. So Camel Cats to start, then 5 or 6 of those rotations. And that is a lot of your spinal work, your thoracic work. Tick, done. Okay, squad, bringing it to a close in a second, but we are back with the box. And for me, hip mobility is something we kind of touched on a little bit earlier in regards to band distraction, but what I'm now going to do is do some hip openers in regards to glutes. And again, 2 different planes of motion. So the first one, all I'm going to do is I'm going to do some high box step up leans or some holds. So effectively, up in this position. Give me 1 second. The boys did not know we were moving. What we're going to do is you can see I've stepped quite far back, so I'm not too close to start with. And the reason for that is I want a little bit more control with that back leg, so I can kind of push the heel down. I can go up onto the toes. But what I'm effectively going to do is lean forwards, down and in. So I'm getting a little bit of kind of dorsiflexion as well with pushing that knee over the toe, but stepping that back leg back and allowing the height of the hips to just drop very, very slightly. And it is this super acute angle on this hip that I'm aiming for. So that's the primary objective here. So again, with the other one, leg back, up onto the toe, and again, being on the back toe, it just allows us to have a little bit more control. Boom, down and in. I'm not going to be able to push the knee as far forwards, as I have a lot of problems with my left ankle, hence the blood draining that I've had twice now, most recently last week. But effectively, hips being dropped. And again, this acute angle, torso, and then basically fish hooked back up, all the way up to the knee. It is that hip angle that I'm going for here. So that is the first plane of motion on the glutes, done. And the next one, to finish it off, guys, same box, flip it up as high as you can. And then from there, foot onto the outside, knee down, and we're going to do a bit of a pigeon. And I enjoy doing this up on a box as opposed to on the floor. Again, I think it's just a lot more accessible, and I think if some certain stretches or mobility movements and positions are too painful, it kind of has the opposite effect. You don't loosen and you don't breathe into it, everything just flipping tenses up. But the benefit of this is that exactly the same as the last one, I think a lot of people would be able to get into this position, but then if you want to make it more challenging, you can step back with the other leg, and once again, boom, just bend the other leg, drop, lean forwards, and you've just got enough control by being in a standing position that you kind of get to manipulate the dimensions that you're in. You kind of get to manipulate the position a little bit more than you would do if you just sat there flipping, leaning over, grimacing as it's painful. So kind of 30 to 45 seconds of each. And again, kind of moving around, and the more that you do this, it will start to be intuitive, that you'll start to be like, right, I want to be in this position, I want to be in that position, I'm feeling a little bit of tightness there, so I'll lean forwards, or actually I'm fine, but this hip, you know, needs to do something, and then you'll rotate a little bit more, or you'll laterally flex over, or whatever it may be. But 2 different glute exercises for you there, a funky step up and then a funky pigeon. Static mobility done, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you did enjoy that. So a little bit of a different kind of change of pace. But as I said, it's one of the unglamorous things, but the fact of the matter is it is flipping relevant in terms of maintaining our performance, our health and our physique. If we are functional bodybuilders, if we are trying to do the classics and improve strength, if we're trying to become more powerful and more athletic, if we're trying to do some conditioning work, functional fitness, CrossFit, whatever the hell it may be, CrossFit are actually very good at kind of implementing this stuff. The slightly more hybrid training and recreational bodybuilding world, probably a little bit less so, but it is relevant. And again, it might not be sexy and it's not particularly sparkly, but if you can get used to just having this stuff part and parcel of your warm-up, as I have definitely with the, maybe not the banded distraction work with the hips all the time as an example, that's me keeping myself accountable by telling you that. But the hip openers, the glute stretches, the rolling of the calves, that's stuff I'm flipping doing all the time now. So there we go, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. We had the banded distraction work. We had the rolling of the foot and the rolling of the calf. We then had kind of the head through on the box in terms of like the shoulder and lat stretches and the thoracic. And then fourth and finally, we had the glute work and the hip openers. Hope you enjoyed this, guys. If you did, please do smash that like button. If you would like to see more content such as this, please put it down in the comment section below. And as always, beautiful people, stay strong, stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will see you in the next video.